Everybody, welcome to Maximum Impact with Jay Cameron. I wanted to bring you on a very personal journey and a journey that I believe will be enlightening for a lot of people. As I've been on this journey for the past several years, I've been taking you to Africa and many parts of Africa, but I'm now in Summerville, South Carolina, and Summerville is where much of my childhood has been spent, or was spent, I should say. And every now and then I get a chance to come here, but today I wanted to come and do some reflections. And this, for some people, this is going to be a little eerie or whatever, but it's good to take these moments to kind of reflect on life, because life, the brevity of life is so real, and you can just look up and, it's gone. But I'm not coming here to talk about how it's gone, but I want us to be inspired to make the most of the time that we have here. So I'm at a very personal place, which is Brownsville Memorial Cemetery in Summerville, South Carolina. And this is where many of my family members are buried. And I'm going to take you through this so that you understand the importance of just reflecting. I'm going to take you and show you generations of people and memories that I have. These are not people who I don't know. These are people that helped to raise me. These are people whose voices I still hear ringing in my ears to this day, and the influence that they had upon my life. And what I would hope that you would do is take some time to reflect upon those. We talk about ancestors and those who have influenced our lives. I want to introduce you to some of the people who influenced my life, shaped my life, and if it weren't for them, I would not be the person who I am today. So, and it's a semi-family cemetery. It's not fully family cemetery, but it's a lot of people who buried, and I'm just looking now just at some of the names and some of the faces. Well, not some of the faces, obviously, but some of the names and just remembering some of the faces. So I'm going to start with two people who were, I guess you could say, the matriarch and the patriarch of the family, and I often talk about them. This is Jordan Simmons Sr. and Alma Ketchen Simmons, and this is my great-grandfather and my great-grandmother. And my great-grandfather was born in 1892, and my great-grandmother was born 1904. And so there's a very interesting story here, and it has a lot of layers to it. But my great-grandfather, his grandfather, Jordan Swindle, was one who from what they say, he escaped from slavery and went to fight in the wars or whatever was going on during that time. And so he has if you pull up his name, Jordan Swindle, you'll learn more about who I believe is his great-grandfather. But on my mother's side of the family, they were the leaders, if you will. And I remember their voices, because as a child, I remember my great-grandfather, Jordan, he would be upstairs in the room, and he would, I remember when he was still walking around. So he was in his late 70s, and he was still walking around. And then after a while, he became bedridden. But I remember my great-grandmother, she used to drive the car down this very road, down the Bay Road, 70 miles an hour. That's what she would do. That's how she would roll. But I also remember when she was getting around, and then I remember when she started to decline in her health. I can still remember her voice. I remember one time when I was probably about 14 or 15, I went to her, and my grandmother and my mother, they would always say, well, go see grandmother. And so I went to go, and I had some extra money from the job that I was working that summer, and I gave her $20. And so she started crying. She was like, oh, I'm going to remember this for the rest of my life. I'm going to remember this. And she passed away in 2001. So it was maybe 20 some odd years ago. But those types of memories. I remember when I was a child, they used to babysit me when I would visit for the summers, my great-grandparents. And then next to them is Aunt Geraldine, their youngest child. And she recently passed away in 2018. But I have so many memories of Aunt Geraldine because she used to work in the beauty parlor with my grandmother. And they would work there. She was the youngest of their, I believe, 8 or 9 children. She was the youngest. And so, you know, you just kind of go. I remember Aunt Geraldine's voice. I remember when I would go drive to the back of the bay. As a matter of fact, there's a road named Jordan Simmons Road after my great-grandfather. But she was working out in the garden, and she was saying, well, Jay, I'm trying to get me a few more years. I'm out here working. I got to keep my energy up. And so I remember that. I remember Aunt Geraldine working with my grandmother in the beauty salon. And I remember when she went and she opened her own beauty salon and what that meant for her and how she was able to help provide even more for her family over the years. You know, again, these are not ancestors who are this, you know, mystery. I mean, these people, I remember Aunt Geraldine cooking for me. I remember grandmother, we would go to, during the holidays, during Thanksgiving and Christmas, we would always go to see grandmother and granddaddy at Christmas time. And this was back in the late 70s and going into the 80s. So it's these things that I cherish and I hold on to. And then over here, we have we have Aunt Alma Lee, who is their daughter, Jordan and Alma's daughter. I'm not sure where she fell in it, but see, Aunt Alma Lee during the summertime, what she would do is she would make these ices, and she would have the ices, and we would go to Aunt Alma Lee's house to get these ices. And so she and Uncle Pete, that was her husband, next to her son, Timmy, that's what we called him, Timmy. And then over here, her daughter, Manya. And so these are, again, Aunt Alma Lee, my grandmother's sister. And so I remember Manya. Manya used to drive the school bus. Timothy, he used to be a brick mason, you know, see, and knowing his, you know, his children around my age. And so I remember when, you know, when Timothy was coming on, he was a little younger than my mother and the other siblings, but I just remember Timothy and all of what he, you know, all the different things that he was doing over the years. And he would talk. I remember his voice. I remember Manya and her voice. Let's keep going. I share this with everyone because sometimes we don't respect time and how quickly things go by. And we waste a lot of time in life involved in nonsense and foolishness. And I just as a reminder, as I'm looking, where? Here we go. Uncle Bill. I remember Uncle Bill. This is my great grandparents' son. And so I remember when he had cancer, and I remember going to visit him in the hospital back in '86. And it was right before, maybe a couple weeks before he passed away, or maybe even less time than that. But I remember going to see him. I remember Uncle Bill, he used to live in the house with them. Over the years, he spent most of his life living, he had a room always in their home. But again, as I was saying, life goes by so quickly. And I want to take you to some other people that really had an impact in my life. Life goes by so quickly and we waste so much time in foolishness and so many different things that it's like I come here and I'm reminded of these people who, I mean, I can literally hear their voices. And I can literally, I'm just looking, 1881, 1947. I'm just trying to see if I see anyone else that stands out to me along here. Here's a grave, but it doesn't have a marker anymore. And this is the thing about life. It happens so quickly that if we don't have a headstone, if we don't have someone who invested the money into it, our lives and our contributions can literally be erased. And that's something that I think that many of us don't really take as seriously as we can, because I'm just kind of looking around to see who all I remember. Some of the names that don't stand out. You know what? Let's go over to this one that says right. I don't know who this is, but I don't know who this is, but that name, is that who I think it is? Yeah. So Miss Alethea Wright, Mr. George Wright, but Miss Alethea in particular, when I was growing up, she would always have something kind to say. She would see me, and she lived right across the street from my grandparents. And I just remember Miss Alethea Wright, someone who played a major part in my life. Wow. Ellington. Okay, Edward Gardenia, we used to call her Guard. And they lived right up the street from my grandparents. And they had a son named Duke. Duke passed away as well. Not too long ago. Duke and I were the same age, or close to the same age. He was born a year after me. And I thought that for some reason he was buried right in here. Maybe, is this his head marker? I don't think so. No, that's somebody named Valerie. Let's see, where's Duke? Duke passed away several years ago. This looks like this could be his grave right here. Wait a minute, what's this? Wow. This is it right here. Edward Ellington, we called him Duke. Edward, his name was Edward Ellington, but we called him Duke. 1973, 2013. This is it, this is the marker. Man. I remember playing with Duke. We played football together. We did everything together as children. And this is not an ancestor, this is a peer. And you just kind of come through and you just realize that at some point we all reach this place. For some people, again, this is morbid. This is not morbid. This is really just a realization that time goes by quickly, and that if you're in life and if you're wasting time not maximizing and producing the most that you can or living your life to the fullest, then when we get to this place, how many ideas are in this graveyard? How many dreams are in these graves that were never realized? How many thoughts, how many lives that were lived that people won't even get credit for because someone didn't document it? Maybe you document your life. Maybe you take and you write that book so you leave that legacy. Those words will be here long after you're gone. Those stories will be productive. Maybe it'll help somebody else. Who knows? It's just that when you come to a place like this, you can reflect and remember. I don't know some of the names over here. I know, some names that just don't. Some people, military. Some people were. Who knows what the stories are? I mean, I think that's another part. Stories. These were people's lives. Every person I'm talking about had an impact in my life. Every person did something. I'm looking here now, and I see Aunt Virginia, my grandmother's sister, Jordan and Alma's daughter. Aunt Virginia, right here. Aunt Virginia used to watch me. Her house is right over there. She used to watch me when I was a child. She used to cook for me. I mean, Aunt Virginia could throw down in that kitchen in a way that, I haven't tasted her food in 30 years, but I can still taste the flavor because it was just that good. But this is Aunt Virginia right here. Uncle Marshall, right here. I remember Uncle Marshall. Back in the day, they had this Pontiac Bonneville, and it was a brown one. And I remember one time I went fishing with my grandfather and Uncle Marshall and some other guy, and they had those I forget what the name of the cigarette was, but they had to smoke that cigarette in that car with the windows rolled up. And they rolled it down just a little bit, just to let a little sliver of smoke go out. I'll never forget that for as long as I live. But Uncle Marshall was so cool. I mean, every time he seen me, I always had a smile on his face. Uncle Marshall was that guy. So, but then their son, he's buried right here, Marshall Jr. He passed away before I was born, and then recently, Esther, she passed away in 2020. And I remember when my aunt was in the hospital and she was towards her last days. Esther was in the hospital as well. And I hadn't seen Esther maybe 20 years. And I went in Esther's room and I said, Esther, I said, you don't remember me? She said, that's G. That's G. And that's what Esther, so I'm looking and again, memories of family that, were here yesterday and gone now, just like that. And then here's Aunt Pearl, and she was the firstborn of Alma and Jordan. And so I remember as a child, Aunt Pearl was, she was battling diabetes. And so she had to go to Georgetown Hospital in order to have her leg amputated. And I was going to a school called Georgetown Day at the time. And my mother was like, Jay, and it was right around the corner. She said, Jay, I want you to go sit with Aunt Pearl as she recovers from her amputation. So I went to go sit with Aunt Pearl and help her, and just be with her during that time. And so she passed away in 1990. But Aunt Pearl could throw down in the kitchen. She could cook. And just the sweetest person. Same thing with her husband, Uncle SD. And so Simon David, he fought along. He fought in World War II with my grandfather. And so again, Aunt Pearl's my grandmother's sister. But these are people who, again, helped to shape my life. I think one of the reasons why coming back and spending time in Africa and spending time around the world is what this does is it says to me to continue to live life, because you never know when it's over. You never know when your time will come, and no one will know your story. No one will hear about it. Let's go over here. Unless you leave the legacy for it to be remembered. Okay. Now, this is my lady right here. This is Aunt B. We call her Aunt Beatrice. So it's Beatrice, but Aunt Beatrice. And she would always call me Jason. Hey, Jason. Every time she'd see me, hey, Jason. And then her husband, her first husband, Uncle Robert, right next to her. And he was one of the Green-Eyed Bandits. Him and his brother Albert, and his brother Albert's right here. They were, I believe they were twins, and they lived next door to each other, and they're buried next to each other here. But Aunt B, she was another child of Jordan and Alma, and again, she could cook as well. Every time I would go by, and I remember the last time I saw her was when it was not too long after my grandmother passed away, and she said, Jay, she said, make sure you come see me. It was 2007. She said, make sure you come see me. She said, because I know I won't see you again. She said, bring those boys to come see me. And so what I did on my way out, I was driving back to DC. I made sure to stop by and see Aunt B at her house. And she was so happy. And it's just, again, if it weren't for her, there were times where, that older generation, they wouldn't tell you the truth about certain things. But Aunt B had no problem telling you the truth. And the biggest thing that she would always encourage me to do was when it came to playing the piano. And she was like, Jay, you play that piano. She said, I love the way it sounds. Just keep playing. I can always go in her living room and play the piano. And that's just something that stands out in my memory. But again, she's gone. But her memory and her legacy still lives on through her grandchildren, through her children, through her nieces and nephews. And that's one of the reasons why I want to be able to share these names. Obviously, most of you won't even know these names, but you have names of people in your life that sometimes we forget when we're moving on in the hustle and bustle. I'm traveling around the world, but this is in many ways home. DC, of course, DC, the DMV, that's home. That's where I grew up. But these people are the foundation. These people are the ones who taught me so many things as I was getting started in life. These are the people who said, who corrected me, who challenged me, who changed my diapers, who gave me baths, who gave me food, who came and said, when I'm driving a go-kart to school in 7th grade, they're the ones calling my mother and letting her know, hey, your boy is down riding on the highway, driving on a go-kart. Y'all need to come, somebody need to see about Jay. What's going on? You know, that's, you know, cousin Viola, she was the one who called and said, hey, I saw that boy riding down the street with a go-kart. He ain't got no license. He's 13 years old. What's going on here? Those are the memories. And, you know, that's the foundation of who many of us, I mean, in your life, who are the people, the foundational people that might no longer be with you, but their memory and their legacy lives on in and through you. Again, take a few moments, even if you never go through and walk through a cemetery, take a few moments to reflect and understand that at some point we all come to this place, whether we're in an urn, whether in a casket, whether somehow there's nothing left. But the memories, how do people remember us? What memories do we leave behind? What tangible things do we leave behind? And I think that's the part where I'm glad to take a few moments to come off of the road and to come back here and to remember these names, to remember these faces, because I remember their faces. I remember their voices. And I'm sure when my time comes, somebody will remember my face and voice. When your time comes, I'm sure somebody will remember your face and voice. It's just up to us to determine how it's remembered and what deposit do we leave that after we return to the earth, that deposit will continue to live on for generations to come. So that's the deal. Take a moment to reflect. Take a moment to really sit down and make some determinations as far as life is concerned, because before you know it, we don't know how long it is. We had some people, grandmother, she almost made it to 100. Granddaddy, he made it to 90. Most of Aunt Gladys, she literally almost made it to 100 as well, because she's right next to them. That's Uncle Junior's, Uncle Junior's wife. Wow. These remind me, because I didn't take you to Uncle Junior yet. Come on, let's go over to Uncle Junior. Uncle Junior and Aunt Gladys. And then we'll wrap this up. These two people, Uncle Junior, who's Jordan Simmons Jr., and Aunt Gladys, and I didn't even realize Aunt Gladys recently passed away. I found out coming through, and they told me, okay, here we are. Yeah, Jordan Simmons Jr., here we go. So, Jordan Simmons Jr. is my great-grandfather and great-grandmother's son. And so he passed away in 1986. And then we see here Aunt Gladys, his wife. She passed away in 2022. She was 98 years old. And when she turned 95, I made a point to give her a call. And she was sharp-minded, everything. She could tell you any story you want to know. My cousin Aaron got a tape of her talking and just telling stories. That's why sitting at the feet of the elders is so important. The one thing I wish I would have done that I didn't do was talk to all of them and ask them the questions that I should have asked. I didn't know to even ask. You know, it's if I could go back, I would ask them so many questions about their childhood, their parents, things that they, you know, I would just ask them so many questions. But the good part about Aunt Gladys is that Aunt Gladys would tell you this stuff, and she would give you, she was like a living history book. And she would tell you so much. And so we were able to glean a lot of insight from Aunt Gladys before she passed away. That's their son over there, Jerome. He passed away in 2013. Their daughter, Zebra, she passed away. Zebra passed away in 2012. Okay. So it's like what I encourage everybody to do, talk to your elders and ask them questions about their parents, what it was like growing up for them, but even see how far back they know. you know, beyond that, because even my great-great-grandmother, she's buried here. Her headstone seems to have disappeared. Ella Ketchens, it seemed I looked around for it. I wasn't able to see it. But you'd be amazed the stories and the things that they'll tell you. And that's why I went to go talk to Aunt Betty, because she's the last living child on my father's side, the last living sibling of my father on his side of the family. And she was able to offer so much insight. And I'm going to share with you a lot of that interview, because sitting at the feet of our elders gives us an insight, and it takes away some of the theories. You kind of get their perspectives, and you're able to see and hear so many different things. So I encourage you, 1, take a few moments to reflect. 2, talk to your elders. 3, really assess your life and make a determination on the type of the deposit that you're going to leave and the legacy you're going to leave for the generations to come. So until next time, you know what to do. Take care. Be safe.